In a previous video, I showed you how edge compute offers some distinct benefits for redirects over traditional servers, including reducing latency to improve performance and the separation of concerns, making data management simpler. So that video was the why. In this video, we're going to focus on the how by creating a proof of concept using Akamai EdgeWorkers and EdgeKV to create an edge redirect engine that is going to start with a single redirect, but can be scaled up to thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands or even more. If you missed the previous video, you can catch a link to it in this video's description, as well as links to anything that I discussed throughout the course of this video. There's also going to be a link in the description that will get you $100 in free cloud computing credits for new Linode customers. So with all that out of the way, let's get started. Imagine you run an e-commerce website with thousands of product pages. From a technical perspective, it might make sense to use the product's SKU as a unique URL identifier. After all, every product has a unique SKU. So this might look like example.com/SKU/ and then the product's SKU, where the SKU value is a unique identifier like 483D5F. One day, the company decides that for SEO reasons, it would be better to use a human-friendly slug in the URL instead of an SKU, something like example.com/products/slug, where the slug might be something like straight fit denim jeans. This is a pretty common pattern for new e-commerce websites to use a slug, but if you have been working with an established e-commerce site, this presents kind of an interesting dilemma. You're going to want to set up redirects from the old product page to the new product page, but because every product SKU is unique from the old site and it needs to be redirected to a unique value for the slug on the new site, you need a single rule for every single product on the site. And that means that you can't rely on something like a wildcard redirect. So now we're tasked with building a redirect engine that sends traffic from the old SKU-based URL to the new slug-based URL. So today I'm going to show you how to do that using Akamai EdgeWorkers and EdgeKV. Before we get started, you're going to want to make sure that you have an existing Akamai account as well as the Akamai EdgeWorkers and EdgeKV products on your contract. You're also going to want to have the Akamai CLI installed with the EdgeWorkers extension. And since we're here, it's worth mentioning that you can find helpful documentation on the Akamai CLI as well as the EdgeWorker and EdgeKV plugins on GitHub. And with all that taken care of, we can get into it. The first thing we'll want to do is create an EdgeKV namespace. The only way to do this is through the Akamai CLI. The syntax is Akamai EdgeKV create NS for namespace, then passing in the environment, the namespace name, the retention period that you want, and the group IDs that you want to give access to. The retention period must be a number between 1 and 3,650, or you can pass in 0 to make it indefinite. And the group ID needs to be for the specific group that you want the namespace to have access to, or you can pass 0 to give it access to all groups. I'm working with an existing namespace, which I created with the command Akamai EdgeKV create NS for namespace, and then I used the production environment, and my namespace name was demo mass redirects, and I gave it a retention of 0 and a group ID of 0. Next, we need to create an access token. And once again, the CLI syntax is Akamai EdgeKV create token, then the token name, and then the EW IDs, which is a list of IDs, or you can pass in all, then the expiry, then the namespace it needs to have access to, and the permissions. Then you need to explicitly say whether it should be allowed or denied on staging, and the same for production. And in my case, the specific command was Akamai EdgeKV create token demo mass redirects, and I passed in all the EdgeWorker IDs. I gave it an expiry of July 1st. I gave it the namespace of demo mass redirects, which is the namespace I created before, with the permissions of read, writing, and deleting. I did not allow it on staging because I went straight to production, which is not ideal. You should probably be testing your code on staging first, but this is just a demo. Once you've submitted that command, you should see an output that looks something like this. Now, I created this just a moment ago with a demo token just to grab this screenshot, but you want to make sure that you keep track of the token value because you're going to need it shortly. Okay, with the namespace and the token set up, the last thing we need to do with the CLI is actually add some data into our KV store. And the syntax to adding an item is Akamai EdgeKV write, then the item type, the environment, the namespace, the group ID, the item ID, and the value. Now remember, I'm just building a proof of concept today for an Edge redirect engine that takes a product SKU and redirects it to a page using the product slug. Now, I'm only going to be using a single item in my EdgeKV store, but in a real world application, you're probably going to have dozens or hundreds or thousands or up to potentially millions of records. And this proof of concept will work up to a large number of datas, but we're only going to be using one today. So the syntax for that is going to be Akamai EdgeKV write, and then I'm going to be putting text into this KV store. I'm going on the production environment in the demo mass redirects namespace. I'm giving a group ID of redirects, and I'll be using the SKU as the item ID. And inside of the value, I'm going to put in a JSON string that includes the SKU and the tag, which I'll be using for the slug. If everything worked correctly, then you should see a message on your screen that your item was added successfully. Okay, with the data inside of our EdgeKV store, we can move on to creating the business logic inside of EdgeWorkers. Now, I'm going to go through an existing EdgeWorker project using the Akamai Code Bundle Explorer, but technically you can write your EdgeWorker logic inside of whatever editor you prefer and upload it as you like. I'm just going to keep things simple and use one that is already ready so that we can just walk through the code. So I have this EdgeWorker called Demo Mass Redirect Engine with EdgeKV. And if I look at the most recent version, I can explore the code bundle here that's been uploaded. And inside of here, I'll see that I have 3 JavaScript files. The EdgeKV tokens file is necessary for EdgeWorkers to access the EdgeKV namespace we set up before. This ensures that only authorized IDs gain access to the data with the proper controls. In my case, this is what the file looks like. It's got this variable with the EdgeKV access tokens, my namespace demo mass redirects, inside of which I have that token value that I had generated in my CLI. I should also mention here that there's a validator that is very, very strict on how this file should be formatted. So if you run into issues like I did, be sure to follow this format as closely as possible, including the var keyword. The next file is this EdgeKV.js file. Now I won't go into the contents of this file too much because this is actually just a helper library to make working with EdgeKV from within EdgeWorkers a lot simpler. This library is maintained by Akamai's EdgeKV team, and you can find more information about the library on the tech docs page. But anyway, you'll want to grab a copy of it from this EdgeWorkers examples GitHub repo, which is linked to from the tech docs page. Finally, we'll have this main.js file, and this is where all of the business logic actually happens. First, we'll import and initialize that EdgeKV library with the namespace and the group that we configured before. Next, I'll set up a regular expression that checks for a string matching the text edge redirect demo /SKU/ followed by a word containing a case-insensitive alphanumerical characters. This word is captured in the group labeled SKU. Next, we'll export an async function called onClientRequest. This function is part of the EdgeWorkers event model and will get executed for every request as the request is received, before checking if a response is available in cache. You can learn more about the EdgeWorkers event model on the tech docs. Now, inside of the onClientRequest function, we can test if the URL for this EdgeWorker matches the regex that we created before. If it does, we know we need to set up the redirect logic. So we can grab the SKU from the regex groups that we had before, and then we can grab the product data out of the EdgeKV store using that SKU. And as long as we have a matching product slug, we can respond with a 301 redirect to that new product page using that slug. So that's the edge redirection logic broken down, but we still need to apply it to a property for it to actually take effect. Back in my properties, I have this property called akamai.austingill.com. If I look at the most recent version, and I scroll all the way to the bottom of the configuration rules, I'll see that I have this EdgeWorker mass redirect demo rule set up. And this rule is basically going to run at any path that matches edge redirect demo and then any path after that. So as long as that matches whatever path I'm looking at, it's going to run this behavior, which is the EdgeWorkers behavior that I have set up to that demo mass redirect engine with EdgeKV EdgeWorker that we were just looking at. And so with everything set up correctly, I should be able to go to akamai.austingill.com/edge redirect demo /SKU/ and then whatever the SKU was for the item that I had there, which if you remember was 483D50. And sure enough, that's going to send me to a page on my website at austingill.com/edgeredirectdemo/straightfitdenimjeans, which is the slug that we were hoping for. And I land on this nice little fake product page that I created just for this demo. Heck yeah, it works. And this is just a demo page that I put together that doesn't actually do anything, but you can see that the URL has changed. But if I open up the network inspector, I can inspect how this redirect works. Now, if I reload the page, I'm going to go straight through the current page, which is not what I want. I actually want to go to the old URL, the one that gets redirected. And if we click it, we can see that every time this is going to get this redirect, and it's going to take, like in this case, only 23 milliseconds to go to the old URL, hit that edge worker, pull the information out of EdgeKV, and respond with a 301 redirect, which sends us back to the browser and loads the page. Now, in this case, the redirect is so much faster than the actual page load. In fact, you'd probably hardly even notice it, in addition to the standard page load times. So as you can imagine, for an established e-commerce product with thousands or tens or hundreds of thousands of products and old URLs that are lying around the internet, you probably want to have these redirects in place, and you want them to be as quick as possible so that you don't lose people to latency. Okay, so that's just one way to implement edge-based redirects using Akamai EdgeWorkers and EdgeKV. Let me know if you got things working by giving a thumbs up to this video. If you did not get things working, go ahead and leave a comment and we'll see if we can get you sorted. And if you enjoyed watching this video because you found it interesting or learned something, or you just like the sound of my voice, why don't you go ahead and subscribe so that you're notified when the next video like this comes out. It's also worth mentioning that if you're just looking for a simpler product that just offers edge-based redirects, Akamai does have a product called Edge Redirector, which offers just that. Edge Compute offers a lot more flexibility beyond just redirects because you can provide your own sort of business logic. So it's worth knowing about both of them. Okay, so let's recap. We've built a system that pushes redirect logic to the edge. This means users experience less latency, faster response times, and a better overall experience. We've also separated the data from the business logic by storing redirect mappings in an edge-based key value store. This makes managing the data a better experience for our teams and doesn't couple changes to data with code changes. So I hope this video was compelling because that's all I'm going to be covering today. As always, there is links for everything that we discussed in the video description, as well as that link to get $100 in free cloud computing credits for new Linode customers. So be sure to give that a click. Catch you next time.